Can you share a little bit about how you eliminate that hierarchy and maybe the value of having that accessibility? Like, is there a story that illustrates, like, when you make senior and executive leaders accessible to people in the company, the value that that can bring to velocity, increasing innovation, and things like that?
Yes. So I can tell you a story about, it's from my past, so not from Snowflake, it's from Google. I was then a very junior employee. I just started, and I was at the same time taking a management class. And the midterm was to interview your CEO. It was a class for working professionals. So usually there was a CEO for everybody. And my colleagues were pretty sure that their CEO will not even respond to their email, and VPs will maybe deign to talk with them. But I emailed Eric Schmidt, and in my email I said, "Hey Eric, I know that you don't know me, but I'm very curious about to meet you. And by the way, I've got this midterm. I would love to, learn a few things and get a great grade." I expected silence or some email from his admin, which would go like, "Greg, get a grip." But instead, Eric found time for me in a week, full hour at lunchtime, and we talked about all kinds of things. I got to know him a little bit more, and to me, the lesson was that if a CEO can find time for me for something so honestly frivolous within a week, that I have no excuse. If someone wants to talk with me about anything, I have to be there within one day. And it also, taking it further, I think a good manager has to kind of have it in him or her that, you don't want to block your team. If your team asks you a question, wants a decision, wants some kind of approval, you cannot be the bottleneck, right? So we are really trying to be that, be very accessible to people, not to be a bottleneck. And if you practice, you get really good at it.
That's such an incredible story. You mentioned this phrase, higher innovation per time unit, and I wanted to dive in deeper into that. So I think the big thing is, like, are there certain practices that you see as like input to create higher innovation per time unit? Like, are there specific practices that you see as like the dials to help out with innovation? Tell us a little bit more about your perspective there.
Usually when I talk about innovation or execution, I like to add per time unit, right? Because you may finish a project, it's going to take you 20 years, right? So yes, you got the finish line, but way later. So maybe I'll first talk about execution, and then I will talk about innovation, right? Because they're kind of, they're not disconnected. For us at Snowflake, it's really important to make sure that once we focus on some implementation, we know exactly where we're going, and chances are very low that we'll have to change tack. Right, so I talked about energy and energy dissipation. One of the biggest energy drains is when you start doing something and you do it for 6 months, let's say, and then it's like, oopsie, no, we actually didn't mean that. We have to change tack, do something else. You wasted those 6 months, right? So we try to front load all the design discussions with, and of course, all the product discussions with our great PM team. And then we do what we plan to do. A part of it is also managing responsibly technical debt. Right? It's kind of easy to move fast when you keep accruing debt and you never pay it off, and then you go into bankruptcy of some kind, and then you have to reemerge from it, right? So managing long and short term is very important. Now, innovation. So let's assume that we actually have execution down pat. We know how to run quickly. Now, how do we come with ideas which are worthy of execution? First of all, it starts with the boldness of the company. So the founders instilled the sort of sky's the limit mindset. Think big. Actually, it's one of our corporate values. Think big. It's very encouraged. And do not self-censor, right? If the idea looks great, for a moment, don't think about resources needed or time needed. Let's explore the idea, because maybe there's something there and maybe we can make it work, right? We have a few means of soliciting ideas from the org. We have a process which I call from ideas to launching. We have a hackathon once a year where a lot of cool ideas come up, and we listen to our teams, right? So at the planning time, we ask every team to, within some larger framework, to provide their own plans. And it's also a venue for teams once a quarter to offer ideas, what they would like to do.